There are state institutions that are commissioned to protect the human rights of every Namibian citizen. These institutions vary from hospitals and courts to police stations and protection services. The Office of the Ombudsman is tasked with investigating complaints from and against every tier of government, thus establishing whether these institutions are fulfilling their mandates. Namibia's Ombudsman, Advocate John Walters, recently published the institution's 25th annual report, containing a summarized review of complaints, as well as recommendations to strengthen government institutions and their service delivery. The report reveals shameful delays in the execution of justice. There is a current backlog of over 10,000 criminal cases, compared to 1,300 in 2011. The outstanding warrants of arrest for persons who failed to appear in court on traffic summons, and those who absconded after released on bail, increased from 24,000 in 2011 to 120,000 in September 2015. Article 12 of the Namibian Constitution provides for the right to a fair trial. Article 12 further states that a trial should take place within a reasonable time to be deemed fair. The current backlog in court cases directly contradicts every Namibian's constitutional right to a free trial. In studio tonight, we speak to Ombudsman John Walters about his findings on the delays in prosecution, their causes and recommendations set out by his office to ensure fair trial rights to all Namibians. Thank you very much for joining us.
No, I have to thank you for the opportunity.
Your office, the report looks specifically at various socio-economic issues, some being education, poverty, unemployment, GBSV, for instance, and one of them is the fair trial rights. But before we get to fair trial rights, could you just tell us how do you compile this report? Where do your findings come from?
Ma'am, if you look at these are daily realities in the life of the citizens of Namibia. For example, education. I highlighted this shortcoming. That is a key human rights issue for me, and I believe for the citizens too. If you look at poverty and unemployment, these are key human rights issues. Which played off in the daily life of our citizens. I think I made mention in my report that the unemployment rate is at 28 or 29%. It's extremely high. Yeah. And I believe that job creation is one of a method, of a manner in which we can combat poverty.
So tell me, you get complaints from tiers of government, but from citizens as well. And what type of complaints do you review for this report?
We are firstly a individual complaint handling office. We receive complaints against all tiers of government, because we are mandated by the Act and Constitution of Namibia to investigate complaints relating to maladministration, violation of human rights and fundamental freedoms. We have also an additional mandate, as shortly referred to as the protection of the environment. And the fourth one is investigation of instances of abuse, of misuse of public money and government property. But I refer to that mandate as misappropriation of public money as theft. Yes. That I leave that to the police and the Anti-Corruption Commission.
These national human rights indicators, what happens to them? What happens to your annual report once it's been drafted?
The Ombudsman is an independent institution, and it is accountable to Parliament, because Parliament represents the people. Yes. And the people of Namibia had a right to know what the Ombudsman is doing, the activities, and how he spent public resources. Fantastic. And that is what we report in our annual report. Fantastic. It is up for Parliament to scrutinize it, refer it to a standing committee, and standing committee has the right to call me to account for my report on any uncertainties or any doubtful matters or matters which they do not agree with me.
Yes.
So that is up to the, and I am glad for this opportunity that we can highlight the importance of the annual report of the Ombudsman. Unfortunately, we do not have the resources to translate it into other local languages. It's too expensive exercise. It is unfortunate that we cannot publish in newspapers parts of it because this year is not a good year.
So the information is very valuable, but I mean, it's not just the review of the complaints, you also make specific recommendations. And that's going to lead us straight into the actual topic of tonight,
yes.
The rights to fair trial. Now, Article 12 of our Constitution ensures that every citizen in the country has a right to a speedy trial. They have the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. And amongst other things, they have a right to legal representation. Now, the biggest findings, or the most shocking findings, is the fact that we have such a serious criminal case backlog. I think it was 1,000, your report says 1,350 cases backlog in 2011, and now we're up to 10,000. Let's just quickly talk about your findings before we get into the implications. How did you get to these findings?
I've asked the judiciary to provide me with the figures, and those are the figures which they provided to the office, and I use it in my annual report to highlight the serious problem in our administration of justice. It is not an accusation. It is, I think it is very necessary that it be highlighted so that we can attack the problem and see what are the root causes of the delays. And I don't think it is just out of my report, because in earlier this year there was a workshop which the Magistrates Commission called, and they invited me, where we spoke about the backlog of cases. And the follow-up of that meeting was the conference, the first annual conference of the judiciary, which took place last week, and this was a topic high on the agenda of this conference.
Specifically, these findings. And also another shocking statistic, I think 24,000 warrants of arrest were outstanding in 2011, and now it's almost 120,000. So these, just for the viewer to understand, what is the implication of a trial being delayed? Now, we have the implication on the victim and on the perpetrator. From your point of view, what are the dangers of these delayed trials?
It may be perceived by the person in the street, by the layman, that something is serious wrong with our judicious administration, in our administrative administration of justice, that Namibia is on its way to a lawless country. It may be that criminals can do whatever they want in this country with no sanctions against whatever they do. A delayed trial, as I may call it like that, has implications, not, as you correctly pointed out, not only to the accused person, whose right to a fair trial is guaranteed in our Constitution, but it also has implications for the victim of crime. Definitely. And for witnesses who are called upon to testify in a particular matter. But for a victim of crime, I always use it and said, he or she, after grief, he or she wants closure.
They want closure.
Now, do you think that if a trial takes place 5 years after the happening of the incident, that is a reasonable time? No. I think everybody will disagree with that. Do you think a witness can still recall 5 years later in detail what happened?
Yes.
You know, you may not have the experience of criminal proceedings, but of many of our viewers may not have. I believe it is another ordeal for a victim of crime, especially in sexual violence cases, where a victim has to relive what happened on that particular evening. You know, 5 years down the lane, 3 years down the lane, it may not be it may not be fair to the victim to remember in detail and convey to the court in detail what happened.
And keep reliving this trauma.
That's reliving the trauma. But you understand, everybody said, but you made a statement, you can refresh your memory. But I was saying,
it's not emotional memory.
That statement is, I believe many a times you will hear or witness, but the officer who took my statement did not ask me. Or I only remember it now. You know, while reliving and the experience of a particular. Now, can you fault me for that?
And I mean, on top of that, just to put the victim aside for a second, there is a lot of focus on the perpetrator and that perpetrator's, you know, rights as a citizen. But in certain instances, if I am on trial and I'm found not guilty, then surely that trial should happen in such a reasonable time that it's not a huge disruption to my life. And on top of that, if I am a perpetrator and I am found guilty, I mean, this hardship that I've incurred whilst being incarcerated before I'm convicted, that surely should add to my rehabilitation. So my next question is, there's a right to the accused to be released if a trial is delayed for too long. Am I correct?
Yes.
And that's right quite dangerous.
A person has to approach a court, but shortly we refer it to stopping of the prosecution. A person may, when a case is so delayed, request the court to intervene, to stop the proceedings against him or her. You know, it happened in the past, but in the couple of years, I've never heard that lawyers, on behalf of their clients, approach the court for stoppage of these
So I mean, once people do figure that out, it's going to open quite a can of worms, perhaps.
Not so much. You understand. You know what can happen? It may have the implication that a guilty person may walk free, but we cannot allow that rights of a person is being violated in contravention of our constitution.
No, we can't.
And courts are looked upon as the guardians of human rights. You know,
and I mean, the onus is on the state eventually to explain, you know, these resource deficits that cause a systemic delay in the court backlog system.
There cannot be when we want to respect human rights, and when, as we guaranteed in our constitution, we cannot hide now behind a lack of resources.
No, we can't.
That cannot be. We have to look to resources because it's a right of a person which is being violated, and we cannot say sorry. You have to accept that we do not have resources to appoint more of magistrate, to provide longer hours, pay them overtime to do extra court work, to build new courtrooms, more courtrooms. That is not an excuse, and it cannot be accepted as an excuse.
Yes, and on top of that, we've also got lengthy pre-trial detentions. So you get people who are incarcerated with hardcore criminals sometimes. I don't know if that's really a reality we're facing. In Namibia, the trial-awaiting inmates are detained at police stations. Okay. The majority of them. Yes. In our prisons do have separate facilities where trial-awaiting prisoners are detained. Right. It does not happen in our country that sentenced and unsentenced inmates are detained in the same facility. Right. The same as with juveniles. They are not supposed to be detained or serve sentence in a particular cell with adults. Okay, so what happened? But then I have to, in my report, I mentioned also that we monitor the detention facilities. Yeah. That is also a tragic fact which the
police, despite, and you will see this morning in the Republican, the Honorable Minister of Safety and Security mentioned about the resources which he received and what they did, and he considered that despite the resources which they received, the little resources that they did so much, but they need to do more.
Yeah, it's not enough.
It's not enough to do it.
I'm going to stop you there, Advocate
Yes.
Walters. Viewers, that's all for now. After the break, we'll talk a little bit more about our rights to a fair trial.
The implications of delayed arrests, trials and prosecutions are far-reaching. Families of victims undergo significant trauma as trials for rape and murder are forever postponed. The wounded and the broken need to constantly relive their pain. Lengthy pre-trial detentions for those who are still presumed innocent are also a gross human rights violation. There are various stakeholders in the justice system, from the police who are tasked to investigate crimes to the various courts where verdicts are waited upon. Inevitably, the state bears the onus of justifying inadequate resources, resulting in systemic delays. After the break, we speak to Ombudsman Walters about the ways in which the state should be tackling the inefficacies of our court systems.
Welcome back, viewers. Still with us in studio is Advocate Walters. Now tell us, our rights to a fair trial is ensured in the Constitution, our rights to a speedy trial.
Yes.
Now we've discussed, there is a serious backlog, criminal case backlog that gets carried on from year to year, and we're really struggling with this. According to your findings and your research and your investigations, what are the problems? What is causing this backlog?
Ma'am, there are several reasons for that, and there are many role players which we have to ensure that a person receive a trial within a reasonable time. You have to understand the police are mandated by legislation to investigate and crimes, to arrest a person and bring him, he or she, before court within 48 hours after his or her arrest.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
Then the case is before court. It is a Monday morning, and they just received the arrest of the person just started on Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. Now the investigation, proper investigation is started, and the case is postponed on Monday morning until a month from here for further investigation.
Okay, so that's the first port
That's
of
the
call.
first point of delay. On the 31st of 8th of September is postponed again. The investigation is not completed, and it may continue for a long time, for a year, that investigations are not. Then I raised the question with others and with myself: why do police arrest and thereafter proceed with the investigation? Why not investigate and then do the arrest? And then the person, the police, the complainant, and have a right to oppose bail. If it's a serious offense, at which I agree, the state have the duty to oppose bail where there's reasons for the person, may interfere with the investigation, may interfere with matters, may abscond, and all of these things. But on a particular day, like today, when a person applied for bail, 2 days from today, bail has been opposed, bail refused. But when the investigation takes so long, then you see Mr. X is released on a 10,000 or whatever amount of bail. No, what had changed?
Yeah, there's no justice.
There's no change because the case was all the time postponed for investigation, but the person is released not because he's not a danger to the society. He may not escape and he may not interfere with the witnesses. He's been released because of the delay in finalizing the investigation.
That makes sense.
You understand?
And I mean, on part of the police, it's a number of things, I'm sure. Lack of skills, perhaps, resources, and maybe on part corruption. One never knows.
I would not go that far, but I would say that the case is withdrawn or removed from the roll because the docket was not brought to the prosecutor in order to start with the prosecution of the matter. So these are all things which contribute to the delay, and that a person might not have a fair trial, and that witnesses' rights and interests are not protected because of delays.
And beyond the police, I'm sure that there are other judicial players or players in the judiciary that need to ensure. I mean, we're going to talk about the role of the Prosecutor General soon.
Yes, but it all starts with the police, you know. What are the obstacles why a investigation cannot be completed within 3 months?
Yes.
For a serious offense like rape. Let us just speak about that. How many witnesses were there? You were on very few, rare occasions, there will be an eyewitness who observed the incident. Very rarely. So then it will be the complainant, the person to whom she made the first report, the investigating officer, the arresting officer, and then the forensic medical evidence.
So there's all you need.
That's all you need. Yeah. That's almost all you have in a case of rape. So why can that case not be in court within 3 months and be completed within another 3 months? It is for the interest of the accused person as well
as the victim and her family. Yes.
But then when the matter is in court and it is a person who cannot afford private legal counsel, he has a right to apply for legal aid. That may take time to consider his request and all this. There may not be a person available, or a private lawyer has been instructed, and there's many things who contributed to a delay in matter. But all the role players, the police, prosecutor, magistrate, lawyers, we have to sit down and see how we can shorten the procedure, avoid unnecessary delays, and surely give expression to fundamental rights. It's poor consolation. I said it on a previous occasion. It's poor consolation for an accused person, or for any person whose rights are guaranteed in our Constitution. You have that right. But 5 years down the lane, you still have to wait for a trial within a reasonable time.
I'm going to play a bit of a devil's advocate role here.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the role of the Prosecutor General. Now, the Prosecutor General does act autonomously, much like the Ombudsman, or supposedly.
Yes.
The Prosecutor General, Martha Mawa, has been there since 2004. And
Me too.
You too. And I mean, honestly, I think a lot of people really, they need a scapegoat. They need to know, essentially, higher up on the chain, whose onus is it? Whose responsibility is it to restructure the judicial system? Is it the Prosecutor General? Is it the Judicial Service Commission? Do you understand? Like, somewhere there needs to be accountability.
Ma'am, the Prosecutor General is the prosecution authority in this country. She is an independent institution, but she has she cannot interfere with the work of the magistrates. The magistrates have their own commission called the Magistrates Commission, under whose jurisdiction and auspices they resort. You know, and then we have overall the judiciary. The Office of the Judiciary, a very recent institution, which was created by the 2014 amendment of the Constitution. So, and the judiciary is headed by the Chief Justice of the country, but the Prosecutor General is outside that authority of jurisdiction of the judiciary. So it's independent bodies, you know, and as but while I said, you ask, who is to blame? There must be some. We are all to blame. We're all to blame. We know about the problem. We allowed the problem to escalate, that it is nearly out of control. And so it is our responsibility, and I include myself in now to find ways and means to effectively address this backlog in criminal
surely
cases.
your recommendations, go to the Judicial Service Commission and, other stakeholders. But again, I'm asking the accountability of who's going to fix this. You can't, as the Ombudsman, I'm sure, you can give your reviews and your recommendations, but essentially, somebody's got to, something's got to give. I think that's really what I'm trying to get at.
Now, you see the stakeholders who have to address this violation of a right to fair trial, I call it broken promises to witnesses that a trial will take place within a reasonable time, and that the courts will look after their interests and rights. It's that the responsibility is shared by the police, by the prosecution authority, by the judiciary.
All right.
These are the main implementing authorities. But overall, it is the responsibility of government. To ensure that
government needs to get these stakeholders together so that we can formulate a way forward.
But that is why government create institutions like the Prosecutor General, the Ombudsman, the Judiciary, to assist government in fulfilling its national obligations, constitutional obligations, and international obligations. So we cannot, now people from, who government? Must it be the minister? Yes, the minister may have the oversight role or look after that things do happen. Because he's the accounting officer, if they can call it, who have to account in Parliament and in the cabinet for what is happening in his or her ministry. Yes. But overall, as I said, those are the responsible institutions.
Parties. Fantastic. Advocate Walters, we are running out of time, but that was a fantastic interview. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just want to add to say thank you to you for the opportunity. But I forget to say the other role player in this matter is the public. You know, sometimes you see in the newspapers, police beg witnesses to come forward, or even name them and said, "You are a witness in this case. Why are you not coming to court?" So we as citizens has offered to take up our responsibility seriously and work with the police, with the prosecution officer to get the case before court as soon as possible and play our role in the
and upholding justice.
Speedy resolution of
our constitutional right.
Yes. That is we do have rights, but unfortunately we did not discuss our responsibilities. I just want to conclude that we all have responsibilities.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. There you go, viewers. We all have a responsibility to uphold the justice system. If you have any comments on tonight's stories, please SMS us at 555.
That's all from us tonight on One Exclusive. Be sure to reach out to us on social media or SMS us at 555 with your comments on tonight's story.